if parenting to you guys feels like a struggle, feels like an uphill battle, feels like I'm always losing in this parenting battle, the first thing I want you to know is that you're not alone. I feel like it's a struggle, and in a second I'm going to tell you a story about it. But I just want to introduce myself and say, yes, parenting is a struggle for me. This is me and my wife, Sarah, who's teaching another session right now. And we have 2 daughters, Ava, who is 6 years old, although she would interrupt and say, not 6, Daddy, 6.5. And Bethany is 4 years old. So parenting is a struggle for us. And with us today we have Seth and Stephanie. So could you guys say hello and say your kids' names? And
yeah. I'm Seth.
Stephanie.
And our oldest is on the far right, Levi. He's 13. And the next one is next to him. That's Abby. She's 11. And the next one is right below me. That's Mackenzie. She's 7. And then to my left is the next one, Lillian, who's 4. And then I'm holding the youngest, Josiah, who's 1. Yeah.
And all of us probably wish that right now we were there at the beach instead of the weather getting so much colder, so that's great. So parenting struggles real quick before we get into the content, because I want us to all feel like we're in the same boat. We're in process, we're messing up, we're failing, we're not doing everything right, and that is a good place to be, actually. Our house sometimes looks like this. I say sometimes, but sometimes more than sometimes. Our kids look like this many times. Isn't Facebook, Facebook is fun to connect with friends. I just signed up for Facebook this year for the first time. You guys proud of me? Anyway, Facebook, I don't know, stresses out my wife sometimes because she's scrolling through all these nice pictures. Wow, look at what they're doing with their kids. And we don't really get to see this side of the lives of family members. I think we need to see it. I think we need to see that for all of us, it's tough. We actually felt this tired. We did not put this this wasn't okay, let's make a tired face. Oh my goodness. I remember one time I was so tired that I felt like I couldn't do the next 3 hours of the evening with my kids, and Sarah felt the same. And so we had to call my parents to be like, can you please take the girls, because I feel like if I do something else right now, I'm going to run out of energy to the point of death. Parenting struggle real quick. This week, my oldest daughter Ava was reverting to, she's like 6.5, and I felt like she was acting like a 1-year-old. Oh my goodness. So I think there was a debate in the morning before I went to work about which sister was going to use a certain toy, a camper toy. And so Bethany was threatening to tell Mom that Ava wasn't being fair. So Ava just comes charging out of the room and Bethany's going to tell on me and this and this and that. And it led her into a tailspin for the whole day. She got into the car to drop me off, my wife and daughters drop me off at work every day and pick me up from work every day. And I tried to explain a little bit of something, in the car on the way there to sort of smooth things over, hopefully you guys will have a good day. But as soon as I got out of the car, Ava was being nasty to her mom, and so Sarah reached her hand back while she was driving, and she was like, Ava, put your hand in mine. And so really, really slow, flopped the hand on there, and then started pulling back. And then Sarah was like, you're pulling your hand away from me, and this is not appropriate. And Ava was like, I'm not pulling my hand away from you. Just complete lie. And then she got home and had to be put in timeout. And Ava, 6.5 years old, made her body go limp so that she couldn't pick her up. And I was like, when I heard and got back, I was just like, this is crazy. I thought we've been over this before, kind of thing. But I just want you guys to know, the Howards, Caleb and Sarah, we struggle in parenting. Seth and Stephanie?
Well, we have constant whining. I think would probably be the theme of what we get a lot. Constant is a good word, probably. constant whining. Stories of this week. I mean, it's funny. We're not from this church, and the intentionalness of this church in parenting, and I just really appreciate what they do with the milestones. So it's neat to see. Like, you don't really think of a 1-year-old all the time of coming under authority, how much they do understand or don't understand. And a lot of times and I think Caleb will get into this, a lot of times we as society think it's cute that some of the temper tantrums that they throw. It's important, some of the stuff he's going to present, that through those struggles that we are consistent. And I can just think of Josiah right now as a 1-year-old. He's at the stage right now where he will stomp his entire body and scream at the top of his lungs until he's, red, beet red. And so we face these struggles of temper tantrums and whining a lot. I don't know if you want to add any of that to it. So.
Thank you.
But I think a lot of this is, it will tie together just how monumentally important this stuff is.
And it's not easy to be transparent with struggles. It's like sort of the last thing that we would want people to know about ourselves, that we go through struggles. But I think if we aren't transparent with each other, and you guys with each other, and you guys with your in-laws, and you guys with your friends, we sort of create this culture in our society where we better have it all together, or else not having it all together is shameful. Oh, it would be so nice to let those walls come down through our willingness to be vulnerable and transparent. Hey, I'm struggling here. Hey, could you listen to my struggle? Hey, could we pray together? Could we actually believe that Jesus and his gospel is not something that's supposed to just affect our future destination of heaven and hell, but Jesus matters for the mess of parenting? And can we talk this out? Can we talk this out in relationships? So I hope you guys can relate. Can you relate? Parenting is a struggle?
Yes.
Please say yes. Or else I'm going to feel alone. And that it's a struggle. But anyway, infants and toddlers, that's our stage. Milestone 2 is for age, 1 to age 5, 6, And they're cute. And they cry. They smile. And they smack. Fun. And fits. They're little cuties. And really defiant all at the same time. I've been hit by my kids. I've heard my daughter, her favorite phrase for age 1 and 2 was "Daddy, I will not do what you say." Pretty, poopy, tickles, tantrums. So we're going to talk about that today. Milestone number 2, coming under authority. Where are we going with this? I just want to tell you a little overview of our session today. We're going to talk about 4 indicators, 4 things that if you're doing them in your home, you can sort of feel no matter the struggle, no matter the process, no matter how many times you feel like you're messing up, if you feel like you're making progress towards these 4 things, if you're making deposits into these 4 accounts, you're going to be on track. This is going to be okay. So we're going to go over those. It's not super quick, but that won't be the bulk of our presentation. I feel like I think we would be doing a disservice to session participants if we don't make things practical. So I'm going to try to pick 2 topics that are relevant to the toddler age and just be really practical with scripts, with what you can say in these 2 areas. So hopefully after we go over those 4 things, maybe you guys will be willing to get up and we'll sort of gather over here. I have a doll and some toys and we'll make a mess kind of thing, and we'll talk about 2 areas that maybe can be helpful, okay? So 4 indicators that you're on the right path. Our church calls them core competencies. And the first is you'll be on the right path as a family if during this time, during the age of 1 to 5 or 6, whoops, sorry, wrong slide. I think we're just going to skip opening prayer. Not that prayer is not important, but okay. Core competency number 1. You'll be on the right track if by like age 4, 5, 6, they're starting to be able to, with a little bit of ability, the child is able to define what that big word is, a word that's not really used very much in our culture. Can they define obedience? So I'm going to ask Seth and I'm going to ask Stephanie a couple questions about what this looks like in their home. Seth and Stephanie, towards this end of a child being able to define obedience, can your kids define obedience?
At this age, I would say obedience to them would be yes, Daddy, yes, Mommy. And it's a constant reiteration of those terms of yes, and listening the first time. So that's a way that I think they would define, what does obeying mean for babies?
Yeah.
I've had that conversation with Lily. What does it mean to obey? Yes, Daddy. Yes, Mommy.
Good.
Listening.
Yeah, can we park there a little bit? Can you tell us, what conversations did you have to have, whether it was informal or formal? How did your kids end up in the place where they sort of were able to say, obedience means, say, yes, Mommy, yes, Daddy? Why didn't they pick something else? How did you guys arrive on that? What happened in your family that allowed you to get to that point?
Number one, your training.
Trial and error. So just teaching them, it's just the process of doing it over and over again. If Mommy tells you to do this, then you need to do this. And it might not always be with the right attitude, but I think that you've got to stick to one thing at a time. So saying, if Mommy says do this, then do this. And if you don't do it, we're going to try it again until you do it. So that's a big, with little kids, how we
I was just going to say, big thing is modeling it. A lot of times you tell them what's wrong. All right, that's wrong. It's putting a whole twist on it where it's more about, this is what's right, and this is the way that you'll do it, and then we're going to continue. All right, put you back in the location that you were until you do it, and you present that you can do it the right way. So that's, I would say, repetitive over and over. And is it hard? Yes. Is it tiresome? Yes, because it's a lot easier to say you should listen and be done with it. But modeling it, through the process helps out a lot.
I really like what you said about in dealing with this obedience thing, that when you tell them this is the way that it needs to be done, that then you said take them back to the instance of disobedience, to put them back in the same place and expect obedience rather than saying, you didn't do it right that time. Next time make sure you're obeying, and then we'll just sort of move on with our day. But going back to the instance of disobedience and insisting that in the ways that you define that they obey. Good. Last question about this. What do you do to encourage obedience?
When they do it, we praise them. It's a big, yay, you did it. Sometimes we will use our older kids a lot to say, you have little eyes that are watching you, so if you do it right, they're going to try to do it right. So we do use that a lot. We have the older children to help with that, which doesn't always work out well, but.
Say the question again.
What do you do in your home to encourage obedience?
To encourage obedience. I think that's kind of what we are maybe a little, being transparent, being real. I think that's maybe a heartstring that kind of is throwing us a little bit too, is the circle of blessing. I think that's where you're leading us here. The circle of blessing in our household is probably brought up more in moments of you're doing something wrong. You should be in the circle of blessing. So we got to work on to build that up, to foster up that there needs to be moments of positive to be in the circle of blessing. I've actually started doing that with the youngest one, Josiah, a little bit, and just really celebrating and again being transparent. My wife knows me obviously better than all of you do, and when we sat in on his teaching, I would say maybe a year and a half ago, he's doing things that are 100% not the type of parenting style that, that I would just feel is natural for me, and it works. When you get down to their level, and, like I said, one of the things we're doing with Josiah now, I just did it this morning, to obey. You get down to his level and come to Daddy. And there's a big difference between, I just saw it this morning. I'm standing here, come here, Josiah, and he just looked at me. But then as soon as I did this, there's a way of fostering obedience, And what's great about it is we're really modeling God to our kids, because God is not, here looking down at us, come to me. He's here at our level, come to me. So that's one way of,
That's wonderful. And you mentioned the circle of blessing, which I went ahead and advanced to the next slide. And by the way, if you have those notes, there's some fill in the blank things. I don't know if you're open to that, but if you want to go ahead and fill these in for the core competencies, again, you can fill in the blank. Child is able to define obedience, number 1, and child is able to explain the circle of blessing. So our church has this tool, and we have a whole bunch of them available. If you don't have one, it has a magnet on the back with some little tips, so you can take these even now as we're talking about this slide. Feel free to come up and get some. But I'm going to give one to Seth and Stephanie, and can you go ahead and explain what this is and how you use it in your home?
All right, so the circle of blessing, obviously, if you are, and again it has the word obey right in it, so as long as you're living in obedience and you're in the circle, things are going to go well for you, and it's biblical. There's a life, verse that goes along with it. Life will be long, will be fulfilled. You will live a good life. But then as soon as you're outside of the circle of blessing, that's where danger's at. That's where bad things happen. So it's just a constant reminder. It's in our conversation all the time. Are you in or out of the circle? Especially with the toddlers. Obviously, we're not talking to our 13-year-old. Levi, are you in the circle of blessing right now? But, it's definite toddler talk.
And I think that they understand that it's safer, if you feel safe when you're inside the circle of blessing.
Excellent. Okay, so child is able to define obedience. Child is able to explain the circle of blessing. Thank you, guys. And the next one is you'll be on the right track if you feel like in your home during this season of your life that parents understand why it's important to bring their children under authority. We could talk for hours about this. I think just for the sake of being able to get to the practical stuff, I'm just going to, I think all of us probably that we're here today would probably sort of pass this one. We understand that it's important to bring our children under authority. That life is best lived. Life is best lived when we're not doing whatever we want to do. And I always say to students or to my kids, big people, adults, they don't get this right very much. Sometimes we feel like when we get to retirement age and we don't have a boss telling us what to do, or we don't have a schedule, that when we get to retirement age, yes, that's when the real life, the happy life can start. Or when vacation time comes, or when Friday, when the job is done and we have a weekend, now it's me time. Now it's all this kind of thing. And I think I'm spilling into number 4 real quick, but it's just really important to show our kids that life isn't best lived that way. That Jesus, while he was on earth, he didn't say, me time, me time, me time. He said, I do nothing. I say nothing except that the Father tells me what to do and tells me what to say. His life was lived always under the authority of his Father. Sort of spills into number 4, and if you're filling in the blank, you can fill in this one. Parents demonstrate what it looks like to live under authority. It's not going to work so good for our kids if we're preaching, obey, 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 circle of blessing, circle of blessing, circle of blessing, but then they see their dad just sort of oh, I've had a hard day, and so, this is me time on the couch and whatever. I don't think anything that we can teach our kids about obedience is going to work very well if we're not demonstrating with our own lives that that's very important. So, again, 4 core competencies. We didn't really get into them too much, but I just wanted to throw them out there. We're in process where things are hard in parenting. It's a mess. It's a struggle. But these are 4 things that if you're sort of moving in these directions, kids can define obedience, explain the circle of blessing. Parents know that authority is an important issue, and we demonstrate it. We're not going to be perfect, but hey, we're steering the boat in the right direction. Okay? So I want to spend the rest of our time, and we have till 12:45, 12:45, which leaves us with about 40 minutes to do practical. Because this stuff is hard. This stuff, we can say, okay, define obedience, but when you're moving so fast through the schedule of your day and your kids are complaining, or if you're like me, when you're 6.5-year-old, too big for this, why are you reverting to age 1, hangs her body limp, and how do you do this obedience kind of thing in this kind of way? I set up in my slides to talk first about one issue that I think is really important for this age. Age 1, 2, definitely 3, 4, 5. The issue of when you say to your child, or when you say to a child, let's say you're a teacher or whatever, if you're a grandparent and you're saying to your grandchild, so-and-so, Mark, Isabella, JDL, come to Daddy. What does your kid do? So we want to get into some practical things of how to help your kid come to you at the sound of your voice. Should we get into that first, or should we get into the second one, which is the first one is going to be, we're all going to be on the floor over here, and I'm going to be tied to my notes trying to give you tips on how to help your kid come at the sound of your voice. Well, number 2 is going to be slides, and it's going to be 10 ways that you can redirect or motivate your toddler without nagging. Which do you want first? Redirecting without nagging, or a little floor time with come to Daddy or come to Mommy? Number 2. Okay, redirecting without nagging. I think that won't be hard to get there. It's only a few slides. Practical help. All right, how to lead and redirect your toddler without nagging. You guys ready?
Yeah.
Better sit down for this one. Okay, this is going to be super, super practical. I think, like we said, this stuff is going to be on the website afterwards. If you want more direct access to it, feel free to write down your email at the end of the session, and I'll email you all of this so that you don't feel like you're struggling to take pictures of the slides or write it down. But 10 ways that you can motivate and redirect the toddler without nagging. Okay, number 1, try not to say the word no too much. No can lose its meaning and effectiveness if a parent uses it too much. Save no. You gotta say it, but save no for emergencies or very serious infractions, like when a toddler is about to run out into the road, or when the toddler threatens to throw the iPad off the table. If a toddler wants something she can't have, instead of saying no, tell her what she can have, as in the examples below. So instead of saying no, what could you say? For example, the toddler says, I want a cookie. Now, no, you need to say, but we don't want to say it all the time, so let's save it. So what could you say instead of no, you can't have a cookie? No, 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 nagging, 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 nagging. What can you say? Toddler says, I want a cookie. Parent can say, cookies are yummy, aren't they? You can have a cookie after you eat all your rice and 3 bites of avocado for dinner tonight. It's 2 things that you do when you say that. Number 1, you value what they want. Because if you're always saying you're the limit setter, you're the boundary setter, you're the one that says no. It's like you're always like negative kind of thing. And you're never sort of taking some moments to say, cookies are yummy, aren't they? So start with that. Start by valuing what they want. Because usually they're wanting fine things, just maybe not at the time where you're going to allow it. So cookies are yummy, aren't they? You can have it after this. You didn't have to say no, but you said no, but in a very pleasant way. Number 2, toddler says, "Can I watch TV? Daddy, can I watch TV?" Parent says, "You can watch TV for 30 minutes tomorrow morning. Right now we're going to go outside and ride your tricycle." You don't have to say no. Number 2, instead of telling a toddler to stop a certain behavior, tell them what they should do instead. Redirecting. For example, toddler is dripping water from her sippy cup onto her dinner. And it's making the rice and the mashed potatoes just like a soup. And we didn't want soup for dinner. We wanted some solid food that's not dripped all over. So parent, instead of saying, no, don't do that, parent says, water is for drinking. Drink it like this, and then when you're done drinking, put your cup here. How about this? Toddler is eating a napkin that fell off the dining room table last night. Parent says, "This is yucky trash. Trash goes in the garbage can, not in your mouth. Come with me. Let's put it in the garbage can. Go ahead. Can you do it? Can you find anything else that should go in the garbage can?" So even then, like, you sort of, for your toddler, turn something that's like, "What are you doing? You don't eat napkins. Who taught you to eat napkins?" You end that redirecting with actually something that empowers them, like, "Oh, find this." And for a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, they're going to love looking for other things that's appropriate to throw into the garbage. Yeah?
What if they can't understand, like, first this and then that? Like, there's not at that point yet.
Yeah.
Like,
So what if they're too young to, like, not understand the sequence of events? So maybe just don't announce it. Let's say they're 1-year-old and they don't even talk. So probably I would say nothing. And I would, like, sort of hold the napkin with, like, some excited eyes. And I would just be like, and then I would look at the garbage. And then I'd look at this. And then I'd look at the kid. And the whole time the kid's just like, "What is happening here?" And so what I'm saying is, like, this is sort of exciting, this is sort of fun, but you're watching that I'm not putting it in my mouth. And then I'm like, "Oh yeah, garbage." And so then I'm like, maybe hold the toddlers, or what do they call that? They're cruising, and you hold their finger and then you come, and then maybe like rip it in half, and I throw half in, and then baby gets to throw half in, and things like that.
What about the cookie?
What about the cookie? I forget the cookie. What was the cookie?
You have to eat this first.
Oh, okay.
What
Thank
if
you
you-
for these questions. So as soon as you ask that question, like, you have to eat, how do you say you have to eat the avocado first before the cookie? And they don't even, like, get it. So I remember, my mind flashes back to all the memories that were at the dinner table and this stuff is happening. So thank you for asking. So this was like a week-long process. It didn't happen like Monday, but I wanted to insist that my daughters would eat a bite of vegetable. That they wouldn't always forego vegetables to eat things that were more yummy. So if it's a cookie that they want, or we use those little puffs, like the little yummy snack things. So I would hold the puffs, and let's say they're not even in a talking age, so hold the puffs just out of their reach and be like, maybe put one in your mouth, 2 in your mouth, and then take the avocado or the vegetable, and then, like, look at this and look at the vegetable and look at this and look at the vegetable, and then you eat the vegetable with eyes that aren't like, disgusting. Like, eat the vegetable, and then grab one and put it in your mouth, and then take it to your spouse, and then, be like, "Spouse, take the vegetable, and as soon as the spouse eats the vegetable, she gets the cookie kind of thing. You're sort of demonstrating, first avocado, then cookie for all the siblings or for all the adults, or, if it's just you and them at lunch and everyone else is at work or school, just you kind of thing. And then, this is where it gets a little tricky because they're not going to want the avocado. They've tasted it before and it's disgusting. And that's why I say for us it took a week. And so I would just suggest without words that they're going to eat the avocado and this is out of reach. And so right away she's arching her back, no, and I put it in her mouth, just spitting it out kind of thing. But then just like none of this. One thing that was helpful when they're sort of starting to throw a fit in their high chair, so I loved doing this, taking both of their hands and putting it in my one big hand. Such teeny hands, and both hands in there, so that you're restricting their freedom. They don't have anything that they can do. They're sort of stuck. And so there's this avocado, and I can't do anything because my hands are stuck because my dad's holding them. And then I might as soon as there's a little bit of compliance, as soon as there's a tiny bit of that avocado staying in their mouth, like where I know that they're not trying to spit it or they swallow it, then right away, a little bit of cookie kind of thing. And then I'll do it again. To get more, you're going to need this. And then it took a week, but as you keep on insisting with that, then it's just happening. I got to move on because there's so much that we could say, but we're just going to keep flying through this, okay? Number 3, without nagging, how can you motivate them or redirect them? Well, here's some distraction techniques. Instead of telling a toddler to stop a certain behavior, give them something else to do instead. For example, toddler is opening a kitchen cupboard that contains things she should not play with. Parent can do this. Here you go. Play with the Tupperware in this drawer instead. This is for you. This is yes, yes, yes. How about this? Toddler is playing with an older sibling's favorite toy. Parent does give another toy or object and say, this is a nice toy for you to play with. Nice job playing with this. And you better be picking a toy in that moment that's a little bit exciting for her, or else you're not going to receive it. Okay? How about next one? Physically move the child's location if she's playing with something you don't want her to play with. So instead of saying no, don't go over here, no, don't play with this, no. Just especially if they're 18 months, 2 years and younger, just pick them up, remove them if they need to be removed far so they don't keep crawling back. That's one thing that you can do because you're not nagging, you're just moving. Number 5, child-proof it. It's good for a toddler to have chances to learn to obey the sound of your voice. However, you can't teach a young toddler everything you want her to touch and not touch. A long list of rules to follow is too overwhelming. Child-proof it if you don't want her to touch it and you aren't making it a training ground for learning to obey the sound of your voice. You should also child-proof it if it's dangerous and can't always be supervised. Toddler is in the habit of touching buttons on the TV or stereo, so the parent puts the audio or visual equipment out of reach. And toddler learns that the cabinet under the sink can be opened, and it has all those chemicals, so parent puts the snap lock on it. There has to be times where you aren't relying on child-proofing everything, because you can't child-proof everything, and it only lasts for a couple of years before they can climb over the gates and they figure out how to open it. And then you're left without any resources at all. So in those 1-year-old, 2-year-old times, you have to have not child-proof things where they're learning to respond to your voice, or else you're in trouble at age 4, age 5, age 6. But, there are some things that it's good to child-proof. Number 6, say hi. Say hi to it, not touch it. Young toddlers like to touch almost everything that they can get their hands on. It's a way they can explore and learn about the world. It's good to allow them to explore and touch under your supervision. However, if there's something that is not appropriate for a young toddler to touch, consider the say hi, not touch principle. For example, toddler wants to touch the candy at the grocery store checkout aisle. Parent, oh, that's nice, isn't it? That's called candy. Right now, we will just say hi to it. Wave, wave, say hi. We won't touch it. We'll just say hi candy. Because then they still get to interact with it, but they're not touching it. Toddler wants to touch grandma's picture frame at grandma's house. And so the parent can say, just say hi, not for touching. Okay. No, sometimes, let's read it and then I'll read this. Look at what mommy does with this. Look at how daddy does this. This is how baby will do it. Sometimes a young toddler doesn't know how to behave acceptably in certain places. If the toddler has never had a chance to learn appropriate behavior, like at a restaurant, what to do and not do in the booth, or what noises to make and not make, parents should never, if they've never had the chance, oh my goodness, this is huge. If they've never had a chance to learn the behavior, the parents should never get frustrated at that baby if you've never taught them. I was at Rita's Water Ice one summer, and a girl had like a 2-year-old had like an ice cream cone, and it fell onto the cement with all that black gum that's like on the parking lot floor, and she was like, my ice cream's still here. So she sort of picks it up off the floor, and the mom, of course, it's like, you don't do that, it's like smack kind of thing, because in your mind you're thinking, of course we never do that, but the toddler has never learned that. So even though it's the most disgusting thing, we gotta like stop ourselves before that happens to like teach them. Instead, they should teach the baby. Don't assume that your toddler knows all the social norms that you do. Help a toddler know the right manners by helping them look at other people who are exemplifying the appropriate behavior. For example, toddler is at a restaurant standing up on her chair. We know that's not appropriate, but they've never learned that, so they're actually not doing anything wrong. They're just being cool toddlers. So here's what we do. Parent says, look at Daddy. See how Daddy's sitting on his chair? Look at Uncle Roger. He's sitting down. Look at that lady over there. She's doing a good job sitting down. You do a good job sitting too. Toddler is talking loudly during church service. So parent whispers. See how mommy is sitting quietly? See how Mr. Mike is sitting quietly? See how sister is sitting quietly? Right now is a time to be quiet. And number 8 out of 10, the first this, then that, which wouldn't work so good with sequence, for the, but when they're 2 years old, 3 years old, 4, try this. Toddler is having fun playing at a friend's house, and mom knows it's time for toddler to get a diaper change, and toddler's not going to be happy about that because they want to keep playing. Who wants to get their bottom wiped when all you want to do is play with Elsa and Anna? Parent, your parent says, you're doing such a good job playing. You can keep playing this after you get your diaper changed. First diaper change, then keep playing. Then at least they know that they're not being removed, and then they might lose that forever. It might be gone forever, and you're thinking, that it's only going to last, a minute to get your diaper changed, and then you're going right back there. Well, then just let them know that, because all they know is they're getting removed from the situation. Toddler's having fun playing toddler's having fun playing, and dad knows it's time to leave grandma's house and go back home. Parent says, first, come to daddy, then go in the car, then we'll see grandma a different day. The bring two things principle. And I think I wanted to say something else about this, number 8. Okay, personal note. If you're like me, sometimes you'll get nervous when it's time to give your toddler an instruction, especially when you're in a public place like grandma's house or the church lobby. I get afraid that my child is going to start protesting and throwing a fit. If I start feeling these feelings a lot, I tell myself that it's time to provide my child extra chances to practice following my leadership. To do this, First, I tell her that I'm going to start having her practice because I've been seeing that it's not easy for her to do it's not easy for her to want to obey. So I tell that to her. Next, I pick practice times and practice places that will allow me the space for effective training. Because practice time, you need a lot of time to practice some of these like behaviors kind of thing. So you better have some time carved out so that like you don't run out of time. Finally, once the practices are helping her change her attitude or patterns of behavior, I start testing her by asking her to follow my authority in other places, like outside the home or when there's other people around. If I don't have time to practice, and I'm still nervous that my child might protest, I use number 8. Okay, number 9, bring 2 things. Sometimes a child is having so much fun with a toy that it's hard for her to leave it in order to obey an instruction. In this case, you can try the bring 2 things principle. For example, toddler is playing with a doll's house. It's almost time for bath. So parent says, it's time for bath. Do you want to bring 2 things with you to play in the bath so they can bring some of this into the next area? How about this? Toddler is playing. It's almost time to go to the doctor's office. Parent says it's time to go in the car. Do you want to bring 2 things with you? Okay, let's go. Not always appropriate to bring 2 things, but sometimes. And number 10, we will do this at a different time. Use this tip when it's time to be done with a very fun activity. Toddler's been having a blast at a cousin's house. It's time to say goodbye. Parent says, it's been so fun playing with your cousins. They are so special. We have so much fun playing with our cousins. We will do this a different time. We will do this a different time. Now it'll be time to say goodbye, but we will come back later. Say bye-bye, cousins. We'll come back again. We're coming back again. We will miss you. We'll be back again. We'll be back again. As you sort of shuffle them off. We'll be back kind of thing. Okay? We have 15 minutes. Sorry, I didn't have that up on the screen. Okay, we have about 15 minutes. And we do want to get to the come to daddy thing if we have time. But I just want to pause in case there's questions up until that point. Because sometimes question and answer time helps us see that maybe there's something more important to talk about than come to daddy or come to mommy. So let's see where we go with questions. And Seth and Stephanie will feel free to come up and answer the questions too. Or if you have a question specifically for them, let us know.
This touches on a little bit of what you talked about in the last session, but you had mentioned that there will be seasons that you might need to bring instruction as quickly, like as often as every couple of minutes. So my son is almost 2, and that does feel necessary, but it also feels like, I feel like I'm overwhelming him with all the ways that he's failing, because like he's not following a lot of instructions. So where's that balance of like bringing that constant instruction, but in a way that's like encouraging, and like I don't know, like setting up to succeed, I guess.
Good. So Jessica is saying, Caleb, you're saying lead. You're saying redirect, you're saying make sure that they're obeying, but like then it becomes always like this battle, and like I don't want him to feel like he's always doing a bad job kind of thing. So like what can you do, because you don't want to like put this you don't want to put a big weight on these kids, you better be perfect kind of thing. Like what can you do in those instances? Really good question. So I said this in the first session. I try to keep a mental record in my head of what kind of interactions am I having with my kids. Is it a lot of conflictive? Is it a lot of like head to head? Is it a lot of like, we're having a battle and daddy's going to win? Or, you're messing up again, so I'm going to bring direction. Is that happening 75% of the time? Is that happening 90% of the time? Is that happening always? This is going to like be maybe hurtful for them emotionally kind of thing. So what can we do? So I always try I always try to have like this mental note in my head that 50% of the time or more, after I say my kid's name, after I say the word Bethany, what happens after that? Is it an instruction? Is it a correction? Is it you should have done this better? If it's 50% or more that kind of, or you should have done this better, I'm thinking that soon was going to come the time that I say Bethany, and she's not even going to respond because she's thinking, whenever he says Bethany, I get in trouble. Whenever he says Bethany, all these kinds of things. So I need to keep a mental track in my head that after the word Bethany, or after, can you remind me of your son's name again? After you say Sam, what is his experience? And if it's too much of like those other things, then I'm going to say Sam a lot and then surprise him with something very different. Like Sam, and then I gave this it can be like Sam, and then do something fun with him. Or it can be Sam, open your mouth, and then he's like, wait, after the word Sam is coming something really intriguing. After the word Sam is coming really something pleasant. After the word Sam is come, I want to respond to Sam because this is, and I'm seeing all over my mom's eyes. I'm seeing all over her face. She's not saying it with words, but very loudly she's saying, Sam, I enjoy you. I like being with you. You do so good. I'm so glad that you're my son. Or this is so fun. So you take, a little treat kind of thing, pop it in his mouth, and then let him play or whatever, and then be like, Sam, come over here. And he just had a memory of like, that went really well last time I came to Sam. So then he come over here, which you get a little chance to practice like come. And he came over to where you were, and before you give him the treat, you say, you did so good. I said, Sam, come here, and you came to mommy. Kisses, kisses, kisses. So good, tickle, tickle, tickle. Guess what, Sam? And then, show him whatever. And then he's like, whoa. And then what happens is, after the word Sam, now it's 50% or more of the time is feeling a little bit like better kind of thing. So that was a long answer to your question of what should you do if it's getting to be, I would say, increase the amount of pleasant experiences. Come up, plan for something fun to happen. Plan for something exciting. Plan for something intriguing. And you'll develop like a mental list of your go-to things that will be fun. I just did it last night. Like Bethany said, I'm not going to watch this video. I want to go play. And I saw her leaving, and I thought in my heart, like, I don't always want her to feel like playing has to be something that she does alone without a daddy with her. So she went under her little fort and under her tent, and she was there. And I crept up, and I put my head through, and then she's like, Daddy is here in my fun place. And it's like adds up that like 50% time.
One that I was thinking of the last session, but I think it goes along with this one too. My daughter, she's really quick thinker. But my son seems like he's developing a little bit slower, and it seems like it takes a few seconds for him to like even understand what you're saying. So just like the last week, he's been giving us a hard time to obey it. And it's like when we tell him something, well, he's had a hard time before, obviously, but this last week I've noticed that if you give him 3 seconds and do what you're not supposed to do, and you say, all right, I'm going to count to 3, and then you do it, it like gives him a few seconds to evaluate what's going on and if he wants to obey or not. Do you think that's a bad thing?
I think it's wonderful. I'll say something after I say it's wonderful. I think it's great that you're allowing for transition time, and you're like not expecting that you're going to interrupt his fun time and expect like a light switch compliance, because that's a little bit unrealistic. Fun, and then whack with an instruction. Not whack with a hand, but like your instruction feels like a whack because it's interrupting kind of thing. And so you're saying, give him a few seconds to like realize that it's setting in and adjust. And I think that's a great principle to live by. What I try to do is I just try to let those 3 seconds happen before my instruction comes. because if it happens afterwards, he's sort of still in the driver's seat a little bit, like compliance is on my terms a little bit, so like, you might say 3 seconds, but next week I'm going to try for 4 seconds, and then next week I'm going to try for this. And when I'm a teenager, you're not going to have very much power over me, so it's just going to be really tough. So, but what you're saying is so good that you don't want to like have your instructions feel like a smack. So what I do with my girls is I have the transition time happen beforehand. Fun, fun, fun. They're having fun, fun, fun. And I first come in with them in their funness, and I say, that toy is great. You're doing so good. So that the child feels like what he's doing is valuable to you. Doing really good. And then, good, good, good. In a little bit, I'm going to say, come to mommy. Or in a little bit, I'm going to say this. And then go back a second time, 2 minutes before it's instruction time, and say, you're doing so good. In a little bit, I'm going to say this, and you're going to say, okay, mommy. And then you go back and do your thing. And then come back a third time. Okay, in a little bit, I'm going to say, let's go eat. And I want you to say, okay, mommy. And so he's had time to gear up his emotions for like a change kind of thing. And if you feel like it's still hard, then you can say, okay, you're doing so good. Let's bring two. Bring 2 things, and let's go to, the car to go to church or something like that. And then if you've rehearsed with your son or with your child what you want them to say verbally in response, like, we're about to have dinner. I want you to say, okay, mommy, when I say this, and you've given them the transition time to get ready emotionally for the change, then when he doesn't, then it becomes an issue of like obedience or disobedience, and then in a fair way you can bring a consequence because he totally knew it was coming, didn't surprise him, you knew exactly, you prescribed his like behavioral response, his verbal response, you even like scripted it with him, kind of thing. It all happened beforehand. What you're doing is so fun. Give him the time, and now comes the moment. And then if you see like he's not doing it, what did mommy say? And it, if he still doesn't do it, then it's sort of like removal from the situation. Removal from siblings, far away from toys, kind of thing. And then probably the first thing that I would do is I would get his head in your hands and I would say, Mommy said dinner time. You say, okay, mommy. Say, okay, mommy. And if he says, okay, mommy, good. And then go back, put him in the toys, and just like Seth said, do it again. Did he comply? Did he do it? Great. Then we go to dinner time. If he still is having a problem following your authority, removal again, kind of thing. And if you're like me, there's going to be many times when you bring them aside and they're going to be flailing and dropping their body and kinds of things. So besides removal, they're going to need some time to like settle down from their fit, but then we're just not moving on from the situation until. And what I would call those moments, those are training moments. And remember how I said in the slides, you need lots of time for this. So if you're going to like really work on it, really work on my child's like obeying my voice, it's not going to work very well 10 minutes before you go to church and you run out of time, because then it's sort of like, I'm trying to tell you what's the right thing to do, but we have to go, so remember this for next time. Let's go. Because it's sort of like he still wins kind of thing. So when you have plenty of time, then you work on things like that and over and over again, over and over again. Consistency, consistency, consistency. Here comes a big phrase for me. Consistency, consistency, consistency. Because guess what? If you have expectations like routines or rules, anytime there's an unenforced routine, anytime there's an unenforced rule, your rule and your routine becomes your worst enemy. Because if you say, come to mommy, and then you don't enforce it that one time, you're saying something very loudly without words. Anytime you don't reinforce what you have as a clear expectation for behavior, you say without words, I have rules, but my rules are not important. I'm telling you something with my voice, but my voice does not need to be regarded. It does not need to be minded. you have, you're saying without words all these kinds of things. So then, any rule that you have now, because they're hearing very loudly without words, they have rules, but it's up to me whether I like comply or not. Then it's like the rules, they just fall apart, and the rule in the home becomes rules don't matter. That becomes the rule when anything is not consistently enforced. Such a struggle, isn't it? So hard. Yeah. And also, I'm just letting us know, we're not going to get time for this, but on the slides, if there's a link to the Come to Daddy, Come to Mommy thing, I think it's like 6 pages long. If you want to know exactly what to say, if you want to know exactly what to do to help your child practice, 6 pages long. I have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. It can happen, whether you have a girl, whether you have a boy, whether you have someone that's struggling with like ADHD or not. Actually, these like interventions, these helps, these strategies, the more your child is struggling with like maybe a certain medical like diagnosis, the more you need these kinds of things to like support. As a teacher, I've been teaching for 13 years, and if you're a teacher, you know that when a child is diagnosed with a certain like medical condition, the list of your interventions grows and grows and grows and grows. It's like, like pages long of things that you're going to do to help them succeed. But I think in most adults' minds, we think if there's a medical diagnosis, then that's my like get out of jail free card, like, I'll just let them do whatever they want. When actually, the state of New Jersey suggests that if there is some medication kind of thing, the list of support and intervention and strategies grows. The list of, like, even they reduce the student to teacher ratio. So like the more mommy daddy time, the more training time is needed. So this is good stuff, and it's all going to be available. If you want direct access to it, make sure you write down your email on a paper here, and I'll email it to you later today. So one more question then. Yes, Becky.
What do you feel about levels of discipline? Because I've always been told, and with my experience, that boys are a little bit more harder, let's just say. So as far as levels of discipline, we believe that spanking.
Woo! Yeah,
Okay.
I know what you mean.
But the question always is, and I always question myself after the event, did I handle that properly? Was that pleasing to God, or was that out of anger, or did I do that right? Was that too much for what he did? Do you believe in like very tight boundaries or certain rules that are broken, certain consequences? I guess it's maybe right.
I would say yes. I would say pick 1 or 2. I like to not have very many family rules, because then it's hard to enforce them, and if you don't enforce them, then the rules become your worst enemy. So I like to have 1 rule or 2 rules. And then because they're the rules, and I have to enforce them every time, then I think there are times where the discipline feels severe to the kid, and I think that's very appropriate, because as Seth and Stephanie were talking about the circle of blessing, when you're not complying with the main rules, we need to show them that that's danger, and anytime they're not complying and we ignore it, we're saying this danger area is fine, it's comfortable, it's safe. So sometimes a very severe kind of discipline says without words what we want to say with the circle of blessing. Without words, we're saying it's dangerous, it's hurtful, it's, in life as an adult, you'll experience pain if you do as an adult whatever you want. If your boss says, I want you to be at work at 9 o'clock, but you're like, my boss says 9 o'clock, I don't care. 9 o'clock, if I want to keep sleeping, I'm going to do what that's going to be painful to your, career, job. So when you're disciplining that way, it helps them learn.
I guess what I was thinking was like, you have to have specific things that are broken to get a spanking. Like, you know what I mean? But I guess what I struggle with is I don't want to spank on emotion because I feel
Yeah,
that he's gone too far this time.
that's good.
You understand?
Yeah, I wrote a book and on this like infant toddler stage kind of thing, and the last chapter is on spanking. It's not published, but if you want, I can just send you the chapter, and then it does more of like what about emotions, what about this. So maybe if you want that too, then just put what you want next to your email address, and then I'll just send it. Because I wish that instead of like slides, what this time could be like is, let me sit down and hear your story. What are your struggles? What's your household going through? What are you celebrating? What are you challenging? And then just encourage you. You're doing great. You're doing great. Keep going. This is good. This is good. And we should do that as a church. As a church, we're just going to create a culture where we're in process and we like talk to each other about this where, I'm not sure about spanking. Is that something that I should do? What if I'm doing it wrong? What do you think? And you're asking Seth and Stephanie, and you're asking Sharon, and you're asking, Matthew and Lisa, and Kim and Raul, and and we're leaning on resources like Amy DeLucia she's here, and she's been working with young kids for years and years and years and years. What are the things that I can do to help my children? And we're leaning into grandparents, and we're leaning into teenagers. What was your experience as like a child? All these kinds of things. And together, we're inspiring the next generation to love and follow Jesus. That's like the motto for family ministry. Together, inspiring the next generation to follow. So,
Can I say something?
yeah.